There are many situations in which you want to have more than one material assigned to an object. For example, with this sword pommel here, I want to have a metal material for the outer area of the pommel, and then the inner area I want to look like an obsidian or gemstone. To make that happen, I would need to assign two different materials to the same object. There's two ways to do this. One is by assigning to polygons directly. Another is by creating something called a multi-sub-object material and then nesting other materials within it. They both end up at the same place at the end of the process. You have a multi-sub-object material with two or more nested materials assigned to polygons on the object based upon the polygon's ID number. Let's look at the drag and drop method first. I've already got an obsidian sort of material here, so I'm going to rename this and keep that. I'm going to call this one sword gem material, and it's already assigned. I want to create a new material. I'll open up the Tools Material Map browser and make a new standard material. Drag that over. Double-click the name to load it into the parameters. Double-click the sample to make it larger. We'll rename it, and I'll call this one Sword Hilt Metal. We'll give it a gold color. Set that diffuse color to kind of like an orange or gold color. And then give it some specular highlights. And we're ready to assign that. One way to assign it is just to drag the output over to the object. And now it's assigned. Next, we want to assign this material to just these polygons here. To do that, we'll want to select the object and go to the Modify panel. And it's an editable poly object. Let's select these polygons here in the center. Press F3 to go into wireframe mode because we want to select the polygons on the front and back equally. Get in a little bit closer here with Control, Alt, and middle mouse. And I want to select the polygons in the center here. So you see there's two rings. So just get in as close as you can. And then go into polygon mode and drag a selection rectangle in the very center. And then dolly back out again and tumble around to make sure that you've made the same selection on both sides. And if you need to, you can add to the selection with the Control key or subtract with the Alt key. But with those two center rings of polygons selected, click the Grow button a few times until you expand that selection out to include that entire gem area, but not this area here. If you go too far, you can always use Shrink. All right, so those are selected now. We can go back into shaded mode with F3 and then assign this other material. Drag its output onto those polygons and release the mouse, and it's been assigned. We can exit out of sub-object mode and deselect the object, and we can see there it is. We've done it. We've assigned a different material to different polygons in the same object. We can also do that through a manual process, which is to create a multi-sub-object material. Let's investigate this. So go back to my material map browser, scroll down to the bottom and look at the scene materials. Interestingly, now we have a new material listed here that got created automatically, and it's listed as material 11, multi-sub-object. So let's bring that over into the view, just drag it over and instance it. And you will see that we have some connections to these other materials. So this is the first instance we've seen of an actual connecting wire. We've got sword hilt metal and sword gem material both feeding into material number 11, which is a multi-sub-object material. Let's double click on that to load its parameters and give it a name. We'll call it sword hilt multi. And you'll see it has two materials assigned to it. And this one is ID number 1, this one is ID number 2. Now we could have created this by hand. We could have just gone up here to the top, materials, multi-sub-object, and drag that over. Now I've created another one. It's material number 22 in this case. It's listed. And I could double click on that and I could give it another name. And I could call it sword hilt multi 2. Currently, it has 10 material slots available to it. But I could change that. I could click on set number and say I only want 2. Then I could create materials and assign them here. So for example, we could use these here that already exist. Just kind of move things around here just to organize this a bit. So I can make these connections. click from the output here, drag that over to one of these inputs. That's number 1. And you can see that it's been applied there. Create this connection as well. And now you see we have another multi-subobject material. And we can assign that to our object. With the object not in subobject mode, we can set that output. And you can see that it has inherited those polygon assignments because the polygons actually have ID numbers that got created. And that creation happened at the moment that we created our first polygon selection and assigned a material to it. So let's investigate that. If I select the object and in Editable Poly, go into polygon mode, and let's expand this a little bit so we can see more of it. Scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see polygon material IDs. And this is how the multi-subobject material knows which polygons to assign to. So we can see which IDs are assigned to which polygons here. For example, we can say, select all the polygons that have ID number 1. So I'll set this value to 1 and click Select. And now all those polygons got selected there. That's ID number 1. Or select all the polygons that are of ID number 2 and click Select. And now the opposite selection's been made. Additionally, I could set the ID numbers. So for example, let's say I select all the polygons, just by way of argument, and then set all of them to a value of 1. They all have ID number 1 now, and then go out of subobject mode so we can see what we've done. Now they all have ID number 1. And so that's what we see here. They're all receiving this green material. If I wanted to make the polygon selection assignment manually, then I would go into polygons, and once again, F3, so we can be in wireframe mode so we can see this better. Select those polygons, grow that selection out, and then in the Modify panel, set the selected polygons to have ID number 2. Just type in a 2. That assignment's been done. We can exit out of subobject mode, hit F3 to go back into shaded mode, and you can see now those polygons now have ID number 2. In review, we could create a multi-subobject material and assign the appropriate polygon IDs by simply dragging and dropping, or we could do it all manually by creating the multi-subobject material, connecting materials to it, and assigning IDs to various polygons. I actually often prefer to do it manually because sometimes doing it through the automatic method may generate more material ID slots than you need. But it's your personal choice. At the end of the day, though, you do want to make sure that you name your multi-subobject material. If you use the automatic method, it doesn't get a name. It just gets called material 11 or whatever. All right, so this is the one I actually wanted. So here the object is no longer in subobject mode, and I'll just drag that output back over and make that assignment once again. Now, as you see, the sword guard has turned black, and that's because it has the same multi-subobject material assigned to it, and it has polygon IDs that all correspond to this material ID. So what we'd want to do in this case would actually be to go back to our material editor and assign this sword hilt material directly to that guard. So now in this situation, this object has been assigned a material directly, and this object has 2 materials. So they are the same here, but different in this location here. All right, cool. So that's a basic process of using multi-subobject materials. And that concludes our chapter on the material basics.